Here with us today is the one, the only D Train.
What's
Sure, a
up,
lot of you
man?
might, sure, a lot of you might know him from around the way and everything. How you doing today, man?
Doing good, man. Doing good. It's been a, I think I was telling you earlier, we got this, super swamped with work. So I'm glad I was able to work this out. But we just, I got a new job and we got this crazy new program we just got. So things are hectic, man. But I still got to take care of my baby, Clover Health.
Right, absolutely. And that's what I wanted to talk to you about today was Clover Health. It's tough seeing us go back into the low sevens of all things. We haven't hit sixes yet, but and hopefully we don't. But it is what it is. And like I've said from the beginning, every time I talk is this was always 100% a long hold for me. It was never when I bought back in March. It was never a short term thing. I never considered a squeeze. I looked at the fundamentals of the company. I looked at the Clover Assistant, and that's what got me intrigued. And then when Hindenburg put the report out, that's what really got me intrigued because I was like, somebody doesn't want this thing to succeed for whatever reason. So as soon as that report came out, then a couple of weeks later, because I started researching it back in January, right when they despacked, and I actually found it on a scanner. I was scanning stocks,
Uh-huh.
and so that happened to pop up, and I was like, okay, well, let me take a look at it. And then I started doing more research, and uh, what caught my eye was the Clover Assistant and what they were saying about it, what their mission was for it, what they wanted to use it for, and it just made a lot of sense to me. But it seems like there's a lot of there's a lot of short selling going on with this stock. There's a lot of people out there that are super negative on the company itself, which doesn't make any sense to me. And one of those people is Emily Evans. And I don't get what her hope for gain is on this. And I just wanted you to kind of talk about her for a little bit and kind of let everybody know who she is that doesn't know who she is.
Yeah, and first, I certainly can sympathize, right? And my story with how I got involved with Clove was I joined this investment group a while back because I was trying to expand and broaden and diversify my portfolio a little bit. I basically had most of my money set aside in a what do we call them, a robo advisory. I like
Hmm.
a Wealthfront is what I use. And I was like, this is cool. I'm getting some predictable returns. Market's overall doing well, but I want to take a little bit more risk. So I joined this investment group, and they turned me on to Clove, and I just said, all right, I threw some money at it. And then, as much today, and we've been seeing for the past few months, immediately after I buy, I'm like, all right, let me do a little bit of research. I threw a few bucks at it. I've got some skin in the game. And the first thing I see, like when I go and I look online, is Hindenburg report, Department of Justice inquiries. We've got short seller reports. We've got Emily Evans. We've got just this barrage of like
Right.
bad news and attacks. And I'm like, oh my God, what did I get myself into? So I'm hitting up a group. They're like, dude, don't worry about it. This is all being like, this is it's a big spectacle, right? Like, this
Right.
is short sellers, and I didn't know enough about this stuff. So as I became more knowledgeable and I started doing more research, I'm like, there's really something to this company. This is actually something special. So I started increasing my position gradually over time. Kind of got caught up in the big run up in June, just like a lot of
Sure.
people, but averaged
Yeah.
my way back down and ended up with a very healthy position and stronger conviction ever today than I've had since investing in Clover Health, right?
Right.
And you're right. A lot of the stuff you see online, and I'm a little bit more active on like Twitter and Reddit than I used to be previously. I had never like touched Twitter or Reddit prior to getting involved with, like, let's call it the Clover community. But since doing that, I've become much more informed. I feel like I've been able to not only learn but share some good information as well. And it has been, I can see how it's disheartening today because there's a lot less of the personalities that are out there, constantly reinforcing the positive things. And then you've still got the personalities, the Emily Evans of the world. You've got some new
Right.
personalities showing up who make it their
Yeah.
mission to go and, like, to bring this down, right? So
Sure.
yeah, but it all comes down to your outlook and your conviction. And this is a company where maybe at one time it was a short squeeze play. Maybe it still is, right? I don't think that that's out of the cards at this point. But this company has some really good things going for it. Of course, there is still some challenges and some hurdles that have to be overcome. But it's, if if you believe in the company's mission, in their business model, in the fundamental outlook for the company, then for me in my position, I'm not a trader. So I'm good to go. I'll sit on my hands a little bit,
Correct.
and when these things start coming to fruition, it's all good. So that's kind of, that's my position. That's how I got involved. But to your question about Emily, and Emily's a dime a dozen, right? She happens to
Right.
be one of the more vocal ones, one of the more outlandish ones that is in a position of natural credibility because she's a policy expert with an equity research group, for lack of a better
Mm-hmm.
term. And I don't really understand their model. I don't claim to, but yeah, she's built up some notoriety over the time, and she put out a pretty pointed
Right.
video on specifically on Clover Health, and there's been some follow up after that. And so this was kind of when I was doing my research on things, and she had called me out on like Twitter a few times. Just she called me an astroturfer, and what the hell's an astroturfer? I don't even know what that means. I'm
Right.
not in your Twitter club, so I
Yeah.
looked it up, and I'm like, I was almost flattered, like, wow, astroturfer, like it's somebody who's got like a social media following that's out there trying to basically, you're a con man, right? You're an internet con man, kind of like a
Right.
paid agent trying to trick people into investments or something like that. I'm like, I literally have 3 followers on Twitter. I'm a chubby dude with an afro and laser eyes. Like,
Right.
who is going to believe anything I say? So I kind of, I like took that personally. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do some more digging, and that's where I got into her video that Hedgeye published, and it was, the video said, I think the title of the video was like a long slide to zero or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And as I started watching it, I'm like, well, one is, she said some things that are perfectly viable, right? There's some legitimacy to it, but there's some stuff that's absolutely either lacks context or is misleading or is flat out false.
Correct.
And that's where it's like, those are the people that we're up against, is the ones who have built some rapport and have a reputation, yet they can go and say whatever they want, and you're going to have you're going to have their clients and their customers who are going to pay for this nonsense, right? So they're still making their money. They don't have any skin in the game. They don't care. And ultimately, I mean, you could say that they probably, based on, like, let's say that they're investors at the time when they bought these reports. Let's say that everyone went and acted on that information. Well, they all made a killing because the stock went from, upwards of $15 down to the $6 range,
Right.
So, but those are these coordinated attacks that we're seeing. Is Hindenburg report comes out, and then you have someone like Emily Evans as the policy expert in the healthcare in the healthcare arena for Hedgeye, that immediately on the heels of that goes and puts out this video basically saying, yeah, Hindenburg report was all interesting. Here's even some more bad stuff that we want to put out there about this company. And, and unfortunately, that's what we're up against. And that's what, that's ultimately what Clover has to overcome. And the proof is going to eventually be in the pudding. So, that's that.
And it's interesting how, so much information, so much nonsensical information can be put out there, and without, and the thing is the way they do it, the way she's done it, is she's done it just on the tip of misinformation, to where it can almost be looked at 2 different ways. When she puts out whatever information she's put out at, and you can look at it and be like, yeah, I can see that. Or you can look at it on the good and be like, yeah, I can see that. But it's just kind of on the cusp of what she does. And in some shit's just flat out garbage.
Right.
Like it's just flat out nonsensical. But and that's why I'm always, and I say it on, every video that I've done and every video that I do. We're here. The ball boys are here strictly for retail, to get information out, whether it's fundamentals of a company, fundamentals of what's going on in the market, things like that. We'll give you ammunition to go use, to go find yourself, because that's what you should be doing as a investor and trader anyways, is not taking what somebody says to heart without going out and finding your own truth to it, and your own information as far as the fundamentals of a company. So, the video that I did the other day with Matt G on disruptive innovation, that's go read Clayton Christensen's stuff. Go read his book, go watch his videos, go, because that's important information to know for people to go. It just gives them a platform, an avenue to go down. It's just another tributary to go down and find information for yourself. Go look at the balance sheets, look at the fundamentals of the company, look at the fundamentals of what Clover Assistant is doing for everybody, and kind of what their goal is, and tune. And that's why I think the disruptive innovation was so key to get on, because to me, that's what Clover Health Investments is right now. Is they are a disruptor. They have great tech. They have great tech in Clover Assistant, and for what it's going to do for the future of Medicare and possibly healthcare, more than likely healthcare, in my opinion, as well, is very strong, because everything is going to start off, the way that his theory is written is those companies are going to start off with basically the low hanging fruit, and Clover Health is going after the most unhealthy people right now. So they're going after the most unhealthy, but you're going to get the most information that way. You're going to be able to set up diagnostics and more correct diagnostics, because even if you have 30 doctors in a room, they're all going to have their own opinion and their own analysis of what the situation is and what their diagnosis is of that particular patient, and none of them are going to be 100% accurate. So nobody expects Clover Assistant to be 100% accurate. That's impossible. Nothing's ever going to be 100% accurate. And
that's one of the things that's like, when I was researching Clover Assistant, one of the things that I thought was like so fascinating about it is that they're in no way interested in making Clover Assistant the end all be all, right? The Clover Assistant is only there to inform and equip primary care providers, the doctors that are providing the treatment, and they actually build into their algorithm, right? Is they want doctors, they want, I'm going to quote a figure and I may be off, right? I want to say that it was like 65% of the time, they want their suggestions to be right. The other 35% of the time, they want the doctor to say, hey, I've considered that, but I don't believe that applies here. I don't think that that's the correct diagnosis. And then it will take them another route. So it's intended to be interactive with the doctor so that it doesn't really pigeonhole them or give them some predetermined outcome. It's actually meant to give them the information they need to come up with a proper diagnosis and care plan. Yeah, and it's only getting more powerful by the day. And I know that they've been talking about the EHR integrations, and I mean, ultimately, the tool, the software, the AI, the machine learning aspects, it's only going to be as good as the data, right? The data is the foundation for the success of the tool. So if the data is not there, toss the tool out the window. The tool's worthless, right? Because the tool will only have the data that the provider actually carries and inputs into the tool. But with some of these major mainstream EHR integrations and more integrations to follow, once you have access to all the data that's out there, you now have like unlimited power, right? Because this is where some of their IP comes into play and how they're going to handle and manipulate and process the data. And then on top of that, right, and this is where some of the arguments that like people like Emily make are perfectly valid, right? That right now, this is extra work that the doctors have to do. They have this extra process they have to go through in order to be with their contract with Clover so I got all this other stuff I need to do within the EHRs that I work with these other providers, and I got to go and do all this like administrative BS work. And now you want me to do this work within Clover on top of it. But once Clover is part of the routine workflow for the doctors, it's game over, right? You now have your single process flow that you need to work, which is all contained within Clover Assistant. You have all the data. You've got the interactive features that will guide you to the ideal outcome for your patients. Not only will it guide you to the ideal outcome, it will happen more efficiently and faster, right? Take some of the administrative burden off of your hands, and there's no other work you have to do. This is your process. This is a work.
Absolutely. And going back to the disruptive innovation, that's what that is. It's going to start off, it's going to collect whatever it needs to collect, the data it's going to need to collect. It's going to go out and it's going to get its foothold in the patient area and start collecting patients, start collecting data. And then as it strengthens, as it gets stronger, it's just going to continue to go, and then the demand's going to be there. It's going to be it's nobody else is going after these patients. United, Humana, none of them are going after these patients that are unhealthy because it's going to cost them too much money.
Right.
And then I just saw that report that they're behind United and Athena. They're behind like hundreds of millions of dollars in payments. They've been denying claims left and right and blaming it on COVID. Everything's blamed on COVID nowadays.
Right.
But so as it kind of goes through, and that's why when I looked at everything and kind of looked at Clayton Christensen's theory on that, that's what made me really get involved with Clover Health, because I'm okay waiting and holding my shares for 5 to 10 years. That was my expectation from the beginning when I bought back in March, was to hold it that long. It was never, if a short squeeze happens, great, icing on the cake. Nothing I'd never even considered it. But for, to sit down and take a stock like this, an investment, and hold on to it because it's a brand new company. It's a hyper growth company. I'm okay with holding. I'm going to be okay. I mean, and we've talked about it 100 times. I mean, I know we a lot of us call Clover Health the Tesla of health because of the AI technology, but Tesla was the same way. I mean, look how long it took them. I mean, look how long they sat at $10 a share.
Right.
But all these companies, they got to start somewhere. And right now with the Clover Assistant and how powerful that's going to be, nobody else is really using what they have, the way that they're doing it. Vivek and Toy are geniuses in this. Their entire portfolio of management behind the scenes is ridiculously powerful. Fundamentals of the company are powerful. It's going to take them time to get profit, but profit's not going to come until later on. That's with any company, any hyper growth company, any growth company. As time goes on, and the more they prove that their Clover Assistant works, and as time goes, and they start spending less money because they're a hyper growth company, they're going to spend money to make money. I'm okay with that.
Right.
And I know some investors may look at it and be like, wow, I'm not going to get into it yet. I'm going to wait until they're profitable. Well, by then it might be too late.
Yeah, and that's there's people that are purely value investors, and they really don't
Sure.
look for I mean, this is prolific growth right now, but it's also very early on for the company, right? And these are the most exciting stages when you're
Oh
seeing this
yeah.
level of growth, and it's the opportunity to make something that is like a major life changing investment down the road, right? If your horizon is
Sure.
far enough out, so but and that's where it's like. When you look at who you want to trust out there in the world, and one of the things I like that you really said is you're trying to point people to information so that they could go and actually do their own research and come up with
Right.
their own their own solutions, their own end game that works for them. Because a lot of the stuff that you see on the negative side, right, that some of the detractors will say is some of the stuff that I wrote up on, like there's some truth to it, but it's like, oh, this is just a New Jersey-based healthcare company. Well, sure, like on the surface,
Right.
it's primarily a Medicare Advantage company that operates out of New Jersey, but that just basically omits and neglects to consider all these other great things the company is doing, right? But
Right.
I would trust more so than any person, any character online that has something negative to say about a company like this or any other. I would trust the incredible, renowned venture capitalist firms that through multiple rounds of funding have made a bet on Clover Health, right?
Right.
They see something in this company, and sure, they don't. Not every bet that they make wins, but a lot of
Right.
them do. And we're talking about massive sums of money that they are investing in this company based on something that may happen in the future, right?
Right.
And they're making a big bet that Clover Health, on the back of Clover Assistant, is going to be able to change the way that specifically right now Medicare Advantage, but potentially health insurance as a whole, the system operates. And
Correct.
it's a big bet, and it's an exciting proposition if it all works out. And it's something that I've got a lot of faith in because I'm seeing the positive strides happening myself. After doing some research and endless research into the company, into Clover Assistant, and I know that ultimately that is the core competency of Clover Health. It all rides on the success of Clover Assistant. If Clover Assistant ends up being the flop, you're just some other run of the mill insurance company. So, the big money's bought in. I've certainly made my investment. I know you have as well, and
Mhm.
I'm very confident in the outlook for the company. And I think ultimately they're gonna right the ship, right? But there's still some headwinds to overcome. There's still a lot of people that are rooting against it, and the going back to the point you originally made is that right now the overall sentiment is not great, right? And you
Right.
see what used to be is, and we're active on, the social media side of things and Reddit on the Discord. It used to be a much more exciting, fun, positive place, but you could tell people are losing faith. They're starting, hey, is it time for me to sell? Well, maybe that's a personal decision, but that's kind of what people are seeing right now. So without seeing that constant hype and all the positivity and all the positive reinforcement, yeah, I could see why, people would be a little bit skeptical right now. But again, I see so many positive things for this company. I think the mission is incredible, right? Trying to improve every life. Like, what company says I want to improve every life,
Right.
and I'm willing to invest all that we have into this company, potentially to the point where we have nothing left to invest, right? And so that we could bring that to fruition. I think it's great, and again, man, we're seeing a lot of positive things happening with it. So I'm just sitting and waiting, man. But I also think that, if I look back in time, right, going back to the May time frame, where again, like back in May, you see these little spikes, right? It goes up 15%, and everyone's like, "Woohoo! This is awesome, best
Right.
day of my life." And then it's another few weeks of it just constantly getting beaten down. And we're seeing it again where people aren't really talking about it as much anymore. It's like nobody really cares. People have lost hope. They're apathetic, not interested anymore. And that's where it's like, okay, shakeout's done. Now it's like, okay, so the value's there. Then you start seeing some money flow back in, and the excitement builds up again. It's all sick.
Well, yeah, and that's it. And these short sellers are going to continue to try to shake the tree, and until they can't anymore, until somebody goes long and changes their position, and forces everybody else to change their position, kind of like what happened with GameStop, back in January. It's that's what they're going to continue to do. They're going to continue to shake this tree, to shake as many of these guys out. That Look, all I say is just stop looking at it.
Right.
Honestly, set a reminder on your phone, and just go on about your day. If you want to check it every now and then, but I mean, if you're religiously looking at it, 5, 6, 10 times a day, there's no point right now. You set an alert for $10. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's
Um,
where it's I as exciting as things like GameStop and AMC have been, as big of a win as those were for retail, it did a disservice to the everyday retail investor, because now they think everything they invest in is the next GameStop or the next AMC, when that's a facade that's been created, right? So yeah, everyone wants to see that, and that's where I think that people get so frustrated is,
yeah.
hey, I put all that I had into Clover Health, or a significant portion of my portfolio, because I was hoping for some big squeeze, because everything I'm seeing online is saying, oh my God, Clover Health is going to go to the moon, right? But that's also not realistic. So
Well, no, it's and this is a different type of company, and it's. I mean, it bothers me and doesn't bother me that a guy kind of got wrapped into this mean basket, because it's not. It's a legitimate company that wants to save everybody they can and make the country healthy.
yeah, so I mean, you're right. They've like I said, they've got a noble mission, right? It's something that resonates with me. It's something that resonates with a lot of people. Which, frankly, I mean, people can say, "Oh, that doesn't mean anything as far as a company goes." Well, it means something to a lot of people and where they're going to
Right.
invest their money, right? So, it's something you could stand behind and get excited about, and then that's where you start seeing some of these things and some of these promises come to fruition. Look at direct contracting, right? Clover Health became an approved direct contracting entity. By the way, going back to Emily Evans, as the policy expert, she said they're not eligible as a direct contractor. There's no way they'll
Right.
get approved. They don't meet the criteria. Sure enough, the policy expert was wrong, and they were an approved direct contracting entity. And what did they do? They essentially doubled the number of lives under management overnight. It's not very straightforward. And as I've dug into Medicare and Medicare Advantage and direct contracting, it's very convoluted. It's got complex payment systems. They all have their own little like nuances with the different programs, and direct contracting is one of the newest ones that's been put out there. I think it's called the CMS Office of Innovation or something like that, right? So basically, they come out with these new programs of how we can improve Medicare and get different programs out there to, continue with commercialization and decrease costs and improve outcomes. And direct contracting is one of those. So they opened the initial window for direct contracting up to like 50 some odd. It's like 52 or 53 or something like that. Don't quote me. Different insurance providers, with Clover Health being one of these selected ones, right? The goal of direct contracting is to, what they want is they want these insurance providers to have a little bit more skin in the game and take on a greater risk share. And by doing so, enabling them to ultimately make more money, because they're going to have a little bit more say working directly with the providers on different contracting schemes and things like that. So as far as like payments go and everything like that, there's like multiple different avenues within direct contracting on how that all works, different risk shares, things like that, different payment systems of who the payment comes from and who makes the payment to the provider. So it seems like there's some flexibility within the program, but ultimately the goal is to drive down costs for the government, for Medicare, for the taxpayer, while improving outcomes and putting some of the risk more onto the provider's hands, because I think that they're realizing that Medicare and Medicare Advantage is so rampant with fraud right now, right? Specifically Medicare Advantage. And that's where I think direct contracting is so exciting. What is unfortunate at this stage, because it's in such an early stage, it's so immature at this point, right? Is they've got several years where I think direct contracting is going to be out there, at least initially, to see if this is something that they want to extend and take into the future. Is like Clover Health said in their recent earnings release for Q2, is that hey, we got all these new lives under management. We know that we got a bunch more revenue, right? So there's our top line figures. We really don't know how it's going to shake out at the bottom line, because they don't have enough data, enough financial data to really forecast where they're going to end up. So that's going to be very interesting and telling, I think, for the company's future and how potentially lucrative direct contracting can be. Because right now the data is just not there. Is all we have is top line figures, which is basically lives under management and revenue. But right. A cool thing about direct contracting is that basically working directly with the providers under direct contracting,
correct,
they're striving for a 100% adoption rate for Clover Assistant, while within the Medicare Advantage program they're seeing 50 to 60% or something like that. Mm-hmm. So with direct contracting, they just basically make that part of the contracts that they have with the providers. So now you're going to start realizing the value proposition of Clover Assistant, right? And it's going to really be able to, we're going to see the benefit of the tool, or, that's what we hope for, right? We hope to see the benefit, and that we're going to be able to see the cost reduce to the point where MCR goes down. So now they're able to eventually get to the point where they're able to turn a profit, because they're paying out less than they're bringing in, right? Which is ultimately the goal of any company. So
absolutely,
that's where direct contracting is both very exciting and, frankly, it's a little bit scary, because we ultimately don't know what it's going to look like in the future financially. And Clover Health has said, hey, we don't have the information. We're not going to go out there and jeopardize you, our investor, and give you bad information, because we don't know how it's going to shake out yet.
Right. And that's it. And that's it. I mean, nobody ever, well, hell, I mean, if we could read the future, we'd all be billionaires, and that's never bothered me, as far as, when I invest in a startup company or a hyper growth company or a growth company. That's just a chance I take as an investor. I've done my job as looking at the fundamentals, paying attention to the balance sheets, paying attention to their earnings reports, all that type of stuff, to go seeing what type of, SEC filings are going on. You pay attention to all that, and you just keep going with it. It's like any other chance in life that you're going to take. I'm a risk taker by nature. So I'm going to take risks, probably more so than other. My risk tolerance is up there. But on a company like this, it's, a 5-year hold for me is nothing. It's normal for me. because
Right.
I'm primarily an investor. I'll do some trading, swing trading, day trading here and there, but I'm primarily an investor. I will find a stock that I really like. I'll put my money into it and sit and wait and
Right.
move on, and that's kind of why I never YOLO into anything, because I always want powder for, extra powder for other things to do. Whether it's I bought in too heavy to begin with and I got to average down, or I want to swing trade to make extra money. And if the potential has gotten stronger for any particular one of the stocks that I've invested in that I can put more money into, then that's kind of how I just kind of have a revolving door with, as far as how I invest my money and use my day trade and swing trading money to kind of put into whatever else I want to
For
go
sure,
at.
man, and I think that's the right outlook to have, especially with a company like this. There's still some things that absolutely have to come to fruition. I mean, this is
Absolutely.
it's not a slam dunk, right?
No.
There's definitely still some risk, but there's some things that with the level of automation that Clover Assistant provides, right? Some of the easy kills that have inhibited the star ratings and
Mm-hmm.
being a 3-star rated program is not good, right?
Right.
It's down there in the bottom, like fifth percentile or something in that area. But there's some easy kills within there of how they can increase the star ratings, and of course, as we all know, you get increased star ratings, you now get more money because
Correct.
you're getting rebates, you're getting quality bonuses from Medicare, and
Because I think they're
that's where you start seeing the financials improve, and then
right.
they've already if you believe what the company's publishing, and I choose to, and all that, a
Sure.
lot
I
of
do
that
too.
stuff gets audited anyways, and they could be in big trouble if they mislead you. But there's information out there that the company's published in their various reports that says uh, for patients who are being managed with Clover Assistant through a provider using Clover Assistant, the MCR, if you could decompose it down to the patient level, is less. When they're using Clover Assistant, you're seeing more engaged physicians, you're seeing better outcomes. So with the increased Clover Assistant penetration rate going forward through direct contracting and also with
Mm-hmm.
Medicare Advantage, those things combined with some of those headwinds, and this is now when you start thinking real long term is right. Where is Medicare going? Trying to become
Right.
more outcome based as opposed to process based in the administration of Medicare in the process. You've got some of these more near term catalysts. You've got some potential long term catalysts, and if you believe that all that's going to happen, then that's where this starts making a lot more sense, right?
Correct. Correct. And that's it. It's I know that I think on the 7th, somewhere around the 7th, the new star rating's going to come out, if they
Right.
get 3.5 stars or, whatever. And I just don't want to focus on that too heavily, because there's so many other moving parts that need to do well. Because no matter what good news comes out of Clover Health, whether it's their earnings report or whether it's they've just doubled counties that they're into now. So no matter what good news comes out, they seem to find a way to short it even more. Um,
Right.
which which I don't want to focus on things like that. I'm focusing on what's going on. The next earnings report, which will be probably November, would be my guess sometime. But I want to look at that. I want to see if they've been able to bring down the MCR a little bit. I'm not looking forward to them bringing down the MCR until probably quarter 4 of next year, in my opinion.
Right.
Because COVID is still running rampant. There's still a lot of variables that are against that at this point. And with a hyper growth company, yeah, it might work better for some of your bigger companies, your established companies. But for a company like this that's getting in and getting started, yeah, the MCR is a big deal. And I'm not concerned with it, because even right now, I mean, we're what, with 8, 9 months now, 10 months that they de-SPAC. That's such a short term. That's nothing. When you're
Yeah.
looking at the grand scheme of things and the whole outlook of a company like this, it's all about what's happening in the future, 3, 5 years from now. And I know that a lot of people got mentally involved with, like you said earlier, with, oh, it's going to squeeze. We're going to, I hated that. The reason why I didn't like that, because it put too many false visions in people's head, of what investing is. If you want to go in and you want to swing trade GME or uh, AMC or any other, you know what I mean? But this is an investment. To me, it's an investment. Your mentality has to be different. It's a set it and forget it, like the old uh, infomercials. Set it and
Right.
forget it. And that's what it is. And if you want to continue to buy in and expand your portfolio and your holdings, then by all means. But at some point, you have to mentally tell yourself and be disciplined to say this is a long hold, and that way you don't get frustrated. If you're constantly looking for it to go up 3%, 5%, 10%, 15%, every single day, every single week, you're setting yourself up for in a bad way that's gonna put a negative taste in your mouth, not only about the company, or the stock, but maybe about investing altogether.
Dude, for
Um,
sure. And yeah, and it's not it's not for the faint of heart, right? You got to have the right outlook for sure. And that's the again, the unfortunate thing with what's going on with like a lot of the retail investors right now, especially the ones that are making major investment decisions based on something they see on social media. It's the wrong way to go about it. But it's,
sure.
I like what you said. And I think you hit the nail on the head that there's some of these near term things that we're looking at, star ratings increases, even like upcoming earnings reports and stuff like that.
Right.
It's all these are all little pieces of the puzzle, right? And
Absolutely.
in the grand scheme, sure, we'd all like to see a star rating, right? But we need other things to happen as well.
Correct.
That should be a nice positive catalyst. But that's in the grand scheme, that's not going to do a whole
No.
lot. So, but there's some things I'm going to be looking at going forward. When I with each earning report release going forward, and I'm going to look at all the quarterlies. I'm going to be looking at how fast they're burning through cash, right?
Correct.
That's going to be very telling to me. That's going to be probably the primary thing that I'm going to look at. And all the while, I'm going to still want to see some of these other things keep happening. I'm going to still want to see them continue to grow their lives under management.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to still want to see them drive down costs so they could decrease their MCR to the point where they could, get to the point where, hey, profitability is not too far out in the distant future.
Right.
We're going to want to see some stuff like that happen. But right now, I mean, from a cash perspective, they've got enough cash to sustain, especially if they can improve the MCR. So that's one thing I'm going to be looking at. And I want to hear kind of, after I say this next thing, what you're going to be looking at in the near future. And then long term further out, if this all works, right, if the thesis is right, Clover Assistant takes off, it proves to be successful, is providing the value that it's intended to provide. Once we do that within Medicare Advantage, and assuming direct contracting goes out into the future as well, once we figure that out, right, we've got our place in Medicare Advantage and direct contracting. Where next? How does the company pivot? What do they do next with Clover Assistant? I'm
Yeah.
very intrigued to see how do they expand and evolve beyond Medicare, because
Yeah.
there's so many real world applications outside of Medicare alone for this technology that
Oh,
that's where I think this could be something that is truly monumental, because right now still the only application directly is Medicare,
right.
right?
And that's it. And it's, it's that's very telling, because I've been saying, when I first bought into this stock, when I first bought this stock and bought into this company, okay, Medicare, I normally don't buy into any health stocks. I normally buy into like software and tech and things of that nature. So that's why the Clover Assistant really kind of intrigued me. But with when I looked at it, I said, okay, so they're using it for Medicare right now. If this thing does what it's supposed to do, it's going to branch out into healthcare. It's going to branch out to, and who knows what at that point. Because if the technology is that good and it works that well, and I don't expect it to be 100% accuracy, like I said before, but I think they're going to branch out into other things, and whether they're buying themselves into other markets, which is very possible. But that's where I see them personally, in my opinion. That's where I see them going, because in my opinion, it would be a waste.
Yeah,
If the
I agree.
technology is that powerful and
Yeah,
they
and if
don't
you're
branch it off into healthcare.
and if you've done the hard work, you've got the foundation in place where you've got all the EHR integrations down pat,
Be a
you've
smooth
figured out how to
transition.
integrate into the doctor's workflow, put it anywhere, right? Maybe
Yeah,
you got to tweak a few algorithms because you're dealing with a different patient base, right?
correct.
Different underlying conditions, different demographics and age groups. That's the easy part. You've done
Right.
the hard part, right?
Exactly.
And that's where it's like, when you look long term, right now, it's Medicare focused, right? And the Medicare market is only so big. But once you think outside the box, you think, where could this possibly expand to? You've got a much larger potential customer base outside of Medicare Advantage, direct
Right.
contracting. So you expand out to healthcare in general, and then I don't know, man. I think the sky's the limit, and I think you and I are
Eh,
aligned on that.
yeah, I think so too.
One of the things that especially with Clover Assistant, and I know we talk about that a lot because, again, that's one of the things that I'm so focused on. If Clover
Yeah,
Assistant fails, Clover Health fails, right? That's just a reality.
100%.
So, but it's incredible the way that they're doing this and the way that they're developing the tool and the way that they've integrated the doctors and the providers into the feedback loop.
Hmm.
So, this isn't something where it's just like, hey, we've got a couple of doctors that are working with some team of a bunch of software engineers that are going and
Right.
designing some tool that we think is what the world wants. No, you've got, like, each one of your doctors that's using the tool is actively providing feedback to the company so that they can incorporate that into their next software update, into their next revision or their version, spit that back out. So it's a very iterative process that includes the actual users. And that's where, some of the things you'll hear online, and the Emily Evans of the world will say is, oh,
Right.
doctors aren't even using it, they don't even like it. That's just flat out false. That's
Right.
flat out false, right? It's there's some information out there about the net provider score for Clover Assistant compared to some other software tools that these providers are using. And, generally speaking, software in healthcare is poorly regarded because it's
100%.
cumbersome, it's finicky, it's not user focused, right? So the user experience, the user interface is not that good. Clover
Right.
is tackling that because they've got the user, they've got the provider in mind. So that's one of the things that I think is kind of being overlooked, is that when they make this an enjoyable feature for doctors to use this tool that doesn't add additional work to them on a daily basis in an already highly administratively cumbersome environment, the work's done, right? Because they want to use the tool. And then when you got people that want to use the tool, you've got a much more engaged customer base, and your customer in this case being the providers, because you've made their jobs easier. You've allowed
Correct.
them to get back to the core of what they signed up to do in the first place, is providing quality healthcare, right?
Exactly.
Treating their patients. And that is the mission, that's the goal, and the value proposition of Clover Assistant. And if that pans out, then again, I mean, the future, the job going forward is easy, because the hardest part is getting the adoption, getting these providers to embrace Clover Assistant, getting it to the point where they're actively using the tool and getting the benefit out of it. So, and I know that they cover a lot of that stuff. I do want to, yeah, it's worth pointing out, for the people that watch this, is this investor presentation. And I will pull this up real quick just to
Sure.
give everyone a quick look. This is so packed with just great information. Excuse me while I move my screen around a little bit.
You been
Um,
working out, man?
well, you see my
Working out.
pecs? Yeah. Let me share this real quick, because this truly is fantastic, and we could just go through it real quick and show you some of the stuff that they show. Now this goes back. Can you see?
Yep.
Yeah. So if you just do a Google search for Clover investor presentations, you'll, like, the top hit will be a few links, and one of them is this Clover Health deep dive. And this is around the point where they were going through the SPAC process, just before DSPAC, I want to say. And there's just so much incredible information in here. It talks about, our ethos, our mission, our strategy, our thesis. And again, our thesis is all about the Clover Assistant powered physicians drive incremental clinical and economic value, supporting our ability to offer consumers wider choice healthcare coverage at a lower cost, and also driving lower expenses for the government. So it's a win-win across the board, right? Providers
Sure.
are happy, patients are happy, they're paying less, they're healthier, and ultimately taxpayers happy because they're paying less for these plans. They talk a little bit about why they chose to go into Medicare Advantage as the first market they're going to tackle, and that's important here. Our first market, right?
First market.
So they've got the long
Keywords.
term vision in mind.
Yeah.
So a lot of this focuses on the Clover Assistant and how they're developing the tool, what's the significance of the data, how they're utilizing the data, the closed loop feedback loop and everything. It goes a little bit into some of the financials and the projections here. I like some of this stuff right here is, how do we deploy the engaging software? So it kind of goes back to the Clover Assistant development and what they're doing to actually create an engaging environment through Clover Assistant and get the providers to adopt it. This is one of the charts that actually in that DD that I wrote and I posted, this is one of the charts that I put in there, and it's all about engagement, right? And again, ultimately engagement is it's going to make or break, right? Because if you're shoving something that providers don't want down their throats, they're not going to want to use it. They don't, and sure, Clover's paid some of these providers to go and use Clover Assistant because they want them to adopt it so they could see the value, continue helping improve with future iterations of the tool. So, but we're seeing the engagement with physicians, which is great. So, I don't want to go through this whole thing. It's let's see, it's 47 slides and it's packed with truly like valuable, important information about what the company's doing, what is Clover Assistant, why it matters, why this is going to be a game changer in specifically right now within Medicare, but possibly with larger applications in healthcare as a whole. I would recommend that everyone take a look at this. And if you're an investor that's serious about your investment, know this like the back of your hand, because
absolutely
these are the things that we need to be looking at going forward. And that the company needs to be hitting, right? This is them telling us, hey, like, this is what we're striving for. These are our targets. This is ultimately the value proposition and what we're expecting to get out of this. And we should be the ones that are highly interested in seeing them actually bring that to fruition, bring it home.
Yeah. And you can see the link right there, investors.cloverhealth.com.
Right.
To go through there, or you can Google. What'd you Google?
I just searched for, just do it right now live. Clover Health investor presentation. There we go. Already canned, right?
Bam.
So investor events and presentation right here, and then boom, deep dive presentation.
Exactly.
And there's so much good information on the investor relations website. So I've done a lot of digging. Like I said, there's a lot of information. You and I could, if didn't have to go to sleep tonight, we could talk about this all night, right? So,
all night.
But I'm glad that I can refer the viewers to some of this type of information, because there's truly just a plethora of awesome information out there. If you want to be an informed investor, if you're interested or intrigued in Clover Health, do your own due diligence. There's a ton of good information out there. The retail community has done a fantastic job of doing the hard work for you and citing sources for information, or sources where you could go and do your own additional research and go straight to the source. So, that's my put out there is, go and do some research. Don't believe everything you see online. Nothing at face value really means a whole lot. Frankly, hell, take everything that I say for a grain of salt,
Right. Absolutely. And likewise, it's just, like that type of information that you just brought up, that gives somebody an avenue. It gives them a tributary to go down and find information. And that way they have the ability to go in with their own eyes, read and interpret the information the way that they want to interpret it, but at least it's just giving the retail investors the ability to be able to go out and see this for their own eyes. So they're not just seeing it in pieces. Cause obviously you just shared one of the slides on your DD or whatever, where that didn't show the whole picture of everything that was going on within that presentation. Right. We can go through and read the entire presentation. But AD Train, I wanted to thank you for, coming by and sitting down and talking with us. You're a brilliant man. Awesome. Fun to talk to. And any last words for the viewers?
No, I'll just say, hey, not really anything. Just to, for those that are invested, especially in Clover Health right now, keep your head up. There's a lot of misinformation out there. There's for one reason or another, there's people who have made it their mission to convince you that this is not something that's worth your investment, or that you've made a bad investment, right? And trust your instincts, trust the research that you've done. And again, don't believe anything that some dude with an afro with blue laser eyes on Twitter named D-Train ever says, right? Go and do your own research. And I love what you guys are doing, right? I love the mission. I love, trying to bring good information, good DD to the retail community and get them pointed in the right direction so they can make some informed, intelligent investments. I think it's awesome, man. I'm a subscriber. I'm going to keep paying attention to what you guys are putting out there, and see if I could find my next potential, Clover Health through some of the things that you guys are doing and people you are bringing on.
Awesome. I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much. Appreciate you having you on, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you so
Awesome,
much,
man.
man.
We'll definitely chat.